Just remember, kick and chase. Kick and chase. Just keep running.
Terribly patient man. There he is, Coach Roach. This week, though, we've had speculation was rife that Brisbane, with its tremendous crowd support and great amenities, could soon host a final. And that sort of talk is bound to shock the old-timers. But as we head into the 1990s in so many exciting ways, the grand old game is no longer the same as it was way back then.
Ah, you're right, mate. I mean, just leave it the way. Don't change a thing.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
You two are on a carrying-on treat, you know that, don't you? You're sitting here making more fuss about a new code of football than you did about federations 6 years ago.
Yeah, anyway, as I was saying, did you hear that that young Daily Messenger has been offered 180 quid to switch? Plays in the backs to boot. I bet you the forwards do all the work and get paid a pittance for their trouble.
It's no good, though, Frank. They're mercenaries, that's what they are. Professionals. It's going to change the game forever. I've got a damn hard call on this football.
Tell you one thing, mate. You know what these blokes do for a living? They're wharfies, mate. Boilermakers, labourers. Not your landed gentry. No, you're right about the game changing. I'll tell you something for nothing. It'll never be the same again.
To many, they were the voice of reason in a debate that had split society, worker against aristocrat. But even the most moderate couldn't have predicted just how successful J.J. Giltinen's creation would be. He designed Rugby League to find a few pennies for battling footballers, denied them by rugby union. This game would become the badge of the working class, played by hard men who lived in Sydney's more needy suburbs. If only entrepreneur Giltinen was around to see what his simple idea has become. It's a multi-million-dollar industry, and forget the pennies, players share a wages bonanza of close to $30 million. But so successful has the hybrid game become, the clubs that fostered its beginnings are now endangered species. Do we really care if founders like Souths, East and Balmain disappear forever?
They could amalgamate, but they wouldn't disappear, surely.
Certainly would.
As it is, but not add any more nuance in.
It's a Sydney Rugby League competition.
So we need the Sydney clubs to keep the sport going.
Like one big Sydney team.
Do you think that we might need one big Sydney team to beat Brisbane?
Yeah.
I think if we start to prop one up, then you're committed to everyone. And what we've tried to do is run this organisation professionally. We've built the base for this league so the game can be protected. And we're no different to the corner shop. Spend more than you make and you'll get broke. And I think for the league then just to hand out to one, you hand out to the others and you're committed. And I've got to say, that will take the discipline totally away.
It probably won't make any of you City fans any happier, but there is a record of extinction in this game. Annandale was a member of the Premiership in the earlier days, and Glebe left with the Depression in 1929. Industry moved in and the people moved out. And perhaps the greatest casualty of all, the beloved Blue Bags of Newtown 10 years ago. They ran out of money and again traditional support, but really nothing should surprise you about this game. In 1944, Newtown were accused of throwing a final, and in the following year, and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, one player had part of his ear bitten off.
You want one here, are you?
Two pig's ears.
Two pig's ears. Very well, sir. Here you are.
Magnificent. Thank you.
Yours.
You can wrap them.
Raper, Smith and Clay open up play as Pollard flashes onto well-directed passes, but he receives rugged treatment, especially at the hands of Ya Yi, who is called out for a warning by referee Cole Pierce. The Dragons steam through as Raper sends to Ryan, and the law student dashes away to score close to the posts. His first try in 7 grand finals for the Saints.
When the Saints All-Stars put together that world record of 11 straight premierships to 1966, there was some champagne football. But for all but supporters of the Dragons, the vintage soon lost its fizz. It was a ball for losers, and it had to change. And no coincidence that the 4-tackle rule ended it all. At least, that's the way Johnny Raper sees it.
But they saw that we were holding the ball for long periods of time. Our forwards were able to set up our back line, and when we threw the ball to the back lines, inevitably a try would be scored. But with the 4 and 6 tackle rule, with the ball being interchanged all the time, it did let the other side, or the weaker sides of the competition, get up to close scoring to when St George were playing.
The league was beginning to grow. 1967 saw Penrith and Cronulla leap into the fray. But players like Cronulla hardman Cliff Watson weren't convinced about the changes. Do you like what you see now?
I do and I don't. I'm a bit of a stickler for the old rule, you know, the old barge bit. I used to quite enjoy that. You know, where you could get a momentum up and sort of have a go at the line for about 10 or 15 tackles. People say it was boring.
Yes, it is. The game was about bravery. Feats like South legend John Sattler playing in a grand final with a broken jaw. But it was still seen by some as stodgy. A sponsor made it onto a jersey for the first time in 1976, but crowds were down and violence was on the up.
And punches are flying left, right and centre and right across the ground.
Acts had to be cleaned up, and were. Judiciary Sheriff Jim Comans came to town with a sin bin and harsh sentences. By 1982, there were 2 more teams, Illawarra and Canberra, but the game's finances were shot and its image still a little shabby. It was time for a new broom.
Here's looking at you, brave new world.
League boss Kevin Humphreys was out, and John Quayle, off the bench after a club and international playing career, was in. 10 years on as New South Wales League chief, Quayle and chairman Ken Arthurson look self-satisfied. Back in '83, things were different.
We had 8 of our clubs insolvent. We decided to eliminate 2. One of them went out on its own. One challenged us in court.
What Quayle prides himself most on is the expansion. He's added Newcastle, Brisbane and Gold Coast. In '95 will come a second Brisbane team and outfits in North Queensland, Perth and Auckland.
When you look at the vast difference in where we're going to play, Auckland, Perth, top end, 2 teams in Brisbane every week, Canberra and then New South Wales, and the different time zones, it gives us 10 games a week, and I think it puts a whole new face on us.
But Quayle has only been able to sell his sport after sanitising it. The players had to know they were ambassadors. Not even the slightest hint of the old so-called mongrels or mungo face would do. So John enlisted the help of ad man Jim Walpole.
We looked at these 3 ideas. One of them was a soundtrack, a Tina Turner soundtrack called What You Get Is What You See. We found out that her manager is Roger Davies. He's an Australian, which was a head start. And as it turned out, she was recording in a studio in London. And he said, you can have a one day, as long as you do it this Friday. And this was on a Tuesday morning.
Some of the old-timers wouldn't have been used in the ad, but they wonder whether they would have made it in today's game. You could have learnt though, Cliffy.
I would say so, yeah. I'm a good learner.
And you would have trained harder?
Well, yeah, for the money. Do anything with money.
The changing face of rugby league over the years, and that is a real big change there. And fellas, your comments on the evolution of rugby league. And Cliff misses the old days, but I don't think too many others do.
Well, Ken, the game is a business, isn't it? And it has to be run that way. And, you know, I think to the good of our game, the administrators have realised that. We've got a product to sell, and they've done a marvellous job. I believe if something doesn't expand and progress, then it dies. Going to, you know, the areas that we've gone to just means that our game is going to continue. But they are decisions that have not been rushed into, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yes, the game is expanding, no doubt about that, but is it going to get better? Is the standard going to drop? I think it's got to. We've got to find 60 or 70 new players by '95. Where are they going to get them from? From New Zealand, England, Reserve graders will get the opportunity. That's probably a good thing, but I still think the standard will lower just a fraction.
I also think, as we've said on the footy show many times this year, that we have to get to a fair competition. We have to either get to a 20-team competition and play everybody once, or a 12-team competition and play everybody twice. At the moment, it's a band-aid solution, playing everybody once and half of everybody again, and even in 95 that will change to 6 groups, I think.
Meanwhile, the momentum continues. Next Friday, I'm a guest in North Queensland. The North Queensland Cowboys, they launched their jumper and their campaign for the 95 season. Already I believe they've sold out all their corporate boxes and got a waiting list. So there's obviously a huge demand for the game right around the country.
It's all happening, but once again, the inner city clubs, the East and the South, the Balmains, we've got to look after them, or else they will disappear off the face of the earth.
When you say look after them, like, how do you do that? Financially, as John Quayle was talking about, it's very difficult to do. You set a precedent. I must admit, I am a fan of elimination and amalgamation, if that's what's needed. I think that history and tradition is a great thing in any sport, but when it starts to get in the way of progress, then it becomes